Hey there, I'm Eternal, and I'm an object show fan that has barely watched any object shows. It's time to fix that. Let's play Object Catchup. Hello and welcome into Object Catchup, the series where we discuss object show episodes right after watching them. Whether they are new or old, famous or unknown, it doesn't matter. We will get to it all. Now, as part of that little introduction monologue, I say new or old, it doesn't matter, right? However, technically, that has always just been wrong. I take a look at new releases, and the things that are on my list to take a look at are new shows, right, with new episodes. So even though it doesn't technically matter, it kind of matters. And for episode 50, and as it goes with these special episodes from 25 to 25, we will be trying to take a look at something a little bit more popular that I missed, right? Something that I wouldn't be capable of looking at by my regular rule set because it is something from the past, right? It can't release a new episode because it is obsolete, outdated, completed, any of that other stuff, right? So for episode 50 of Object Catch-Up, we are not going to be taking a look at what I said originally I was going to take a look at for episode 50 because I said that I was going to take a look at one back in the day. However, I'm not confident in having the time to take a look at one today. So we're going to be needing to do a special that's a little bit different. It's not more exotic. It's technically the thing I should be looking at. You want to know why? Because the most popular object show episode in history that isn't BFDI or Inanimate Insanity is this thing that I'm going to be looking at right here. It is Object Overload. Object Overload, created by XanyLeaves from 12 years ago. 2013 to 2015 is the runtime of Object Overload, all right, which is what we will be looking at today. As the technically, if you just look at the raw views of this most popular episode, is the biggest object show outside of the big two, with more views than the top animatic battle episode, most views than the top freaking one episode, just any show. So we're going to be taking a look at it at every episode on the Object Overload playlist, which includes the remade episode 1 alongside all of the old series with those 6 episodes for a total of 7 videos. That is the topic of episode 50, alright? Let's take a trip down 10 to 12-year-old video range, and let's take a look at some episodes and see if they withstand the test of time. Let's go. Alright, I just watched Object Overload Episode 1 Rostrum Rampage. So, yes, I'm not joking. This is the first time I've ever watched this video. But immediately from just looking at it, I get a lot of vibes from the era. So, I think that this episode is a very interesting timepiece indeed. Looking at it right now because it gives off like an interesting situation because it's 10 years old, right? It was released on August 1st of 2015. That is a while ago. We were doing like we're doing BFDIA about then, right? And then it's like, I mean, it doesn't look bad, like as far as the way that the episode looks and it's animated well. It looks good, it's smooth, it's nice, it's voice acted pretty well, right? And like it's good. It's good on nearly every aspect, and you can see modern object shows that they have a similar style, right? Like we've not really changed that much. I mean, of course there's a lot of object shows that have completely different art styles, but as far as the ones with this art style, there's not really a 1,000,000% clear like evolution where it's like, oh, this looks terrible. I know this is 100% watchable today, because it's good. And it's because what was different in the era? Why do object shows get made now that were struggling back in the day, right? And the simple, I think, response to that is that basically there is there is a setting of like how many people can do a thing, right? Like this episode, sure, XanyLeaves here could write this entire episode, could animate this entire episode, could voice act everyone, right? Like it can. However, it is so much work for one individual to basically do, right? It is so much work, so much stuff to animate, to make, to do, especially at this high level. Because it's like you can't really hire that many other people because first of all, hiring people is already a concept that wasn't exactly possible back in the day because object shows didn't quite make that much money. They either didn't make money, or if I'm not mistaken, this was also kind of roughly the start of that era where we took the break from BFDI because of the AdSense getting removed. So it's like you see, they already couldn't really make that much money. So first of all, hiring people is a problem, but there just simply were not that many object show animators in the time that could animate to this level. So that means that XanyLeaves here, or however the credits call him, Niall Burns, ends up having to literally do everything himself, and it just ends up so difficult, right? Where yeah, it's like what it takes 8 months to make this reboot episode. It's so much stuff, and it's like yeah, I mean, I understand, but like now just today managed to do it, and it's the same thing that's plagued object shows forever, right? Just that constant, like, always looking at the step that you can do, but can't do consistently, right? That step of like, when BFB was like, oh yeah, I mean, we can make the episode at the highest quality possible, but it takes our current team 6 months to do it. Right, or even more. I mean, no, I mean, with BFB it took years back in the day, right? It takes us like a year to do it, and this ends up as the problem. But yeah. Anyways, let's talk about the episode itself here for a moment. So we start off here with an alliance that's already preformed, a preformed alliance. I don't know how you have an alliance without a show. Like, what do you mean alliance? What are they? Are they just a friend group then? What do you mean? Alliance has to be in a game. But okay. The Alliance decided that it'd be cool, but led by Toofy, alongside Cone, Fly Swat, and friggin' like Paper Airplane, ends up deciding to jump off a cliff dive because it'd be fun, and I mean they do it, I guess. I mean, look, to be honest, they're on about this. Oh no, we need the rope, or they're gonna die. Everybody else fell without the rope and managed to land perfectly fine. Did not die, which is it's like a thing. But then we pretty much just take these next moments to introduce our characters, right? Again, you gotta remember this is a reboot, so it's a little bit different than usual. I like how the toast gets burned because who falls down? Oh yeah, the freaking toaster for some reason ends up shooting a laser beam. I wonder if this is a Shoop da Whoop reference. You know Shoop da Whoop, the freaking fella that just shoots a giant laser beam from back in the early 2010s. Yeah, it could be a reference to that, to be honest. Um, but eventually we get to see some other characters. We have a pumpkin who is who is the character archetype of haha. I am of a it's not thing that is trying to be scary but isn't really. The people just consider them funny. Then we got Lighter, that's the kind of buff character. Boxing Glove, that's very strong, but doesn't really want to be strong. There's the paper, crumbled up paper, that doesn't question it. Boombox, that's pretty social overall. They're pretty cool. Then we have the friend group of um, Soccer Ball and who? I swear you were like a V XanyLeaves logo or something. Like that's what it was. But all right. But and then the main, I guess, source of the episode arrives, where we have this rock, all right, with Melanie, who Soccer Ball and fellas try to for some reason crush with a giant rock. The rock falls all the way down and starts rolling around, chasing an old television. television character. That, by the way, I love the total lack of like spacing understanding going on, because like, what do you mean, like, you're running at the same speed as the boulder, somehow you have like, you gain like 200 meters of distance in one cut, that you're able to stop, look back, look at a rock, push the rock over, right? And like, what? I do like how the rock freaking stops and then turns around again. That's a fun gag. But yeah, then we get introduced to some other characters. We have like a totem character that's two people. We also have the duet of Candy and Globe. Candy likes to hang out with Globe. However, well, debatable. Neither of them really like each other. They just hang out because, I don't know, they feel like they have to. But Candy, I guess, likes hanging out with Globe, but is super easily not triggered, super easily gets upset really easily for anything. And Globe eventually gets upset. We have Popcorn or Corny, I think. But hold on, what are these two people called? Now that's actually a great question. You're called Casey? Oh yeah, because you're a case. Okay. Um, and then there's like the Popcorn, I think. There's also like a drama mask. The rocket ends up going towards the forest. Okay, all right. Now, real thing that I'm not understanding about this writing over here. Why do we need to go look after the rock? Like, okay, if the rock is being an active danger to society, to us in society, okay, but if the rock is going to the empty forest where there's nobody there and it's not chasing us anymore, we don't really need it. Why is it our duty to go up to it? Like, what are we trying to do with the rock? Like, it's gonna eventually crash into a tree and it'll be fine. Like, it's not that big of a deal. They got a picture that is the immobile that is a non-speaking character. They try to gesture and stuff, and I mean, they're pretty good at gesturing. It's a nice way to show off the the freaking nice facial animations as well. This show has a little bit of those, like, the early II, the way that early II had those like facial animations, where like some faces were like over detailed on purpose as part of of like the gag, I guess, in a way. Yeah, basically that is what what we do here. There's a lot of like, I don't know how to describe the animation style. It's like there's it's not a smoothness. I don't know. Like, the way that the limbs move, okay? It feels like there's a more smoothness to them than how they're animated nowadays. Not because it's just kind of, it's a little bit, it's like, it's a smooth in a different way, basically. I'm not saying that it's not smooth right now, but it's kind of smooth differently. Um Eventually the fellas go into the forest because they have to look for the big rock for some reason. And in the forest they end up finding a they end up finding Gamey, or Gamer or Game Boy, which is currently shut off after time. By the way, fixes no, Clock. Sorry, not time. Clock ends up making a recovery center, which the snow globe proceeds to like, I guess, enjoy it. The snow globe likes it. But then we all end up heading into the freaking thing. You see, even Clock is like, yo, there's a rock in the fort. Who gives a shit? I don't know what they're doing. It's literally a gag in the episode that it doesn't make sense. Why are they so enamored about the rock in the fort? And also, they're not enamored about the rock in the fort. They didn't even go to look for it. Did they even find it? I don't know. But like, eventually, we end up finding the Gamey, which has some ran out batteries, which Clock just happens to conveniently have. They end up getting some ultra batteries, and Gamey ends up having no memory, apparently, and they're sort of, I guess, adapting. I feel like the batteries might be too. I think the batteries might be too strong for Gamey, which is an interesting idea, because of course a Game Boy would be old technology, right? In quite a way, and the batteries would be probably very modern and futuristic, which would make the possibilities that, it's a little bit too high voltage. This is a thing. You can have voltages that are too high, like too good batteries for freaking certain pieces of tech like toys and stuff. So it's kind of interesting. But then we end up having a competition show, which I love how we have to describe the concept of an object show. Back in the day, we had to do it, and it makes sense. I don't mind it. You see, even the way that like certain like the things are described on the screen with like the silhouettes, circles, talking and stuff, right? The silhouettes running and jumping. Like II still does that. Like the way that like II season 4 when describing a challenge, right? And we go look at the silhouettes doing it. Like this is still how they do it today, Like it's similar. The way that this episode looks is very modern still, you know? Like there's a couple of like cool elements back in the day that like isn't really a thing that we do anymore. It kind of feels like haha an overload. Like for example, like in the freaking description of like how the show works, we end up utilizing like 6 different fonts in the span of 10 seconds. Like, okay, what are you doing? You're trying to look too cool, right? But eventually we end up having a challenge for to choose the team captains, which is everybody's on a tall podium suspended over water. If you fall down, you're out. The last two end up being safe. I will be throwing dodgeballs at you from my weird wash shower, and you will we're doing that. This challenge, is it good? No, not really. I'm gonna be honest, it's not very good. It's 100% biased, of course, because who are we shooting at them to? We end up having people that are gonna be like it feels random in the way that it is. There's certain characters that we don't get to see for like the first 5 minutes in the challenge, but then there's other ones that we see that are like 6 balls were shot at them, right? And it's like, wait, what? I'm sorry, how is this working, right? So it just feels like we're kind of getting people out based on kind of randomness, and then it's like, oh, there's this people, oh, there's this person. So it's not great. I'm gonna be honest, especially because also a challenge like this where everybody has to be eliminated one by one by one by one. There's like maybe sometimes a duo gets out because they're on the same platform, but eventually they have to get out one by one by one by one. Just makes a kind of a long challenge, right? Because it's like, again, 20 minutes. Maybe you're like, oh, 20 minutes is not that long. Episodes nowadays can be 30 or 40. The latest II episode's like 30 minutes. It's like, okay, yeah, there's like 20 animators on the latest II video. This is animated by one guy. One of them is one person. Poor soul. Try to give one person the effort of animating the entirety of the last II episode, and you'll see how long it takes. You'll see. Like, it doesn't matter if it's the best animator ever. It's hard, you know? But anyways, we have this challenge. One of the things that I find really interesting about this show that I do actually like, to be honest, is that this show is definitely taking advantage of the object nature of object characters. Always one of the things that I enjoy a lot in an object show is when we're not just treating the objects as, yo, this is an object, but they kind of just look like but they kind of just don't act like a person. But like in this show, we act like objects a lot, right? Because like it's true. For example, how many times in an object show do you see a character drop down into the water and be fine? Well, in this show, the technological characters, yeah, they break. Yeah, foods get freaking torn apart. Like, the candy, the freaking, the paint from it wears off, right? Like it makes sense how like we actually have the proper physics of objects and how they act. Essentially, how the cherries, they can, I guess, like circumvent with each other, right? Like they can. It's interesting, like the flying thing can fly and everything, and the punching glove gets to like have things bounce off of them because that's kind of the point, right? Like there's a interest to it, to the way that the characters are. Some of it's very visceral. I mean, as far of course, object gore is funny to say, but like the way that like a melon or gets absolutely sliced up is crazy. But like in general, I do certainly enjoy this video. Especially because of the way that these fellas act. and the way that we are certainly utilizing the object nature of the objects as an addition to each of them and how they work, rather than just, not doing that, which I think is pretty swag, to be honest. Or like, yeah, oh, you see how like the TV switches channels. Yeah, I was gonna say that, but then I forgot. Like, how the TV is a switches channel and not just like a television where it's like, oh, you're just a normal person, but you're in a television box. Like like the fact that you are a TV actually matters. And I think that stuff is cool. That stuff is cool. That stuff is sick. Um, uh, and yeah, but like again, the animation on this is pretty impressive. Like, as I'm currently looking at it, like the scene where like Casey is dodging stuff. Like, you see, it's smooth animation. It's nice. Or like when Crayon eventually comes in and launches it back. Like there's a lot of mobility happening, and it's very high level animation. Basically, the level of animation is absolutely nothing to be scoffed at, despite the fact that it's 10 years old. The only thing that this show I think had it down for them is just, it's so hard to make as a solo for this long, and I mean, it's completely unsustainable for a person, like there's a certain degree where it's like a person just cannot do this for 8 months every time. Like even with the best of wishes, especially with how many contestants there are, like what they'd have to make this show for like what 20 years, and it just doesn't work. And it makes perfect sense, dude. One of the cherry drowning the other cherry is actually so funny. But eventually we had the pop. Yeah, you see like how the puff fella ends up turning into dust and all that jazz. Like there's good stuff in the snow globe breaking. Like again, the characters being the characters is nice and is one of the positives of the show, absolutely. But eventually, after a bunch of them get knocked off, I mean, there's really not too much to say about it, to be honest. I found the intro of the series pretty interesting. It's so jazzy. Intros tend to be like these super energetic beats. Dude, the intro of this show is just like a jazzy beat, like like it's so relaxed, and it's pretty lengthy as well. How long did the hold on? How long does the intro like last? Give me a moment. It lasts from like 11 to bro. This intro's wait no no no. Yeah, this intro's like 50 seconds. A 50-second intro. That's aggressive. I do gotta say that's an aggressive little intro. Even for the time. I mean, for the time, BFDI intros were 5 seconds long, so it's an aggressive intro for sure. But eventually, the two contestants that survive are Boombox and Clock. Clock got thrown a dodgeball at them like 2 times compared to Globey's 1 million. And to be fair, Boombox did dodge them and also took some hits because again, it's kind of random. I'm not gonna lie. Like whether somebody can manage to take a hit or whether they get knocked off is and it feels very random, and it kind of is random, and it's not a great challenge in my opinion, but oh well. They'll select their team members next episode. I'm sure they will. Yep, yep, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, look at animation by Niall Burns, edited by Niall Burns, cast Niall Burns is everybody, like to put except like two people. Like, bro, it's so much. But yeah, it's a very nice little time capsule, and it's a nice way to prove that, like, yo, back in the day, we could in the OG days, the high standard of animation was technically possible. However, it just was not sustainable. That's the big thing, basically. You know, we managed to find a way in the modern era to sustain high level animation, not necessarily do high level animation. Because doing high level animation, we managed to be doing for a long time, but sustaining high level animation is much more now that we have more people overall trained to do it, or actually capable of making people do it as jobs, right? And all that stuff. And now we're capable of more properly having shows of this caliber that, however, actually release. But this show, being a relic of something that managed to happen with this level of animation, despite the fact that it was pretty much a solo effort and it took 8 months, it's very impressive. All right. Now, let's see, because of course this is a reboot. Let's go see the original, because the original Object Overload had itself 6 episodes. Um, we're gonna start off here with episode 1 itself, of the old Object Overload. So the old Object Overload episode 1 from 12 years ago is titled The End of the Beginning. Let's go. Alright, I just watched the original episode 1 of Object Overload, the one with old written on it, which is fun because that technically could be a friggin' acronym for Overload. But it's mainly one for lockdown. I think they call it old, but either way. So this episode is, of course, similar to the previous thing that I watched because it is the previous thing that I watched is the reboot or remastering of this. Basically, it is a reimagination with higher standards of animation, higher standards of quality, just higher understanding as well. However, even though of course that is 1 million times better, this holds itself to a pretty decent standard as well. Um, like in terms of animation, it's pretty solid. Like it gives itself this type of BFDI-ish aesthetic, and the way that the characters move is also pretty fluid. It's pretty solid. The characters, like all of their proper design ideologies remain, even if a couple of them have some updated assets. A lot of them don't, which I think speak to just how like pretty alright the assets and the animation work on this was. There is mainly just a little bit of a boring like sense of environment. That's what like Object Overload, I think the reboot does way better than this, is that this, compared to that, the environmental work here just feels like nothing, Like, this is so empty. Nearly every background is just a grass with a sky, and then that's about it, Like, whether it's the shot of this guy or that guy, like, there's no sense of, like, perspective, as in, oh, yeah, you're in this way and you're in that way, Like, they're all just in grass. Like they're on just different patches of grass, or like it doesn't feel different. So that's kind of the main thing that this had that was improved, because it just makes it feel so much more alive when you can more directly see you're in a place and you're in a different place. And that's like the thing that, comparatively speaking, this show, like this original version, lacks. There's a couple. Nearly everybody comes back for the reboot, except a couple of people. Who doesn't make the cut in the reboot? There's like this CD or tire character. They don't make they don't make the jump. I see in the intro there's some like pink ball. I don't think they made the cut either. And oh yeah, no, I don't think that white ball, which even has lines, even is one of the mainer characters in the show, also really I don't think made the cut into the reboot, which is a very random amount of people to cut out of the cast, but all right. Sorry, accidentally cut off the recording. But we have the challenge that's the same challenge, stand on the podium, you do this stuff. And like, as you can see, even in this challenge, even here, it's not exactly great. To be honest, is that it's I mean, you end up having some characters, some of them dodge, some of them get hit, most of them just kind of get hit by a ball and go, wah, and then they go, wah, and then they get hit away, and then, oh, and then it's like, oh, like it's not really that interesting, to be honest. A couple of them still get friggin' hit, like the stab snow globe gets destroyed and it stabs Melanie, which some of it's fine, and we still get to see a little bit of that work done to like have the cast, the character, to have the objects act like objects in the way that they get kicked off in certain cases, but in a lot of cases also now. Our final three ends up being the same, and then of course Doofy loses, which means that we have ourselves Team Time and Team Toon, because of course Team Boombox. This is entirely just made by one person. We have recommended characters, which, to be honest, now that I think about it, interestingly, is an absence from that newer the 2015 object overload. It's an interesting description for sure. But yeah, shout out to these people. These people are the OGs, bro. Whoever recommended gloving about this cut off. Imagine having your name cut off. Chinese Chicken by Cowsta 1050. I wonder what Cowsta 1050 is doing today. Like, these are the questions that I want to know. But yeah, as far as an episode, do I think this is watchable in today and age? Yeah, I always found a charm to BFDI. Like, I don't mind rewatching original BFDI, but this, it lands the main things that it has to keep itself watchable, which is its animation. It's not laggy. It's relatively smooth. It's pretty like it's efficient in the say that it's not like super low frame rate. It's voice acted. It is microphone quality is fine. The challenge is all right. Like, you can see, it has a lot of withdrawals and like restrictions to it. However, it's still watchable. Would I argue it's better than the original BFDI? The way that it's animated is pretty good. Original BFDI definitely, I think, looked a little bit worse than this in terms of like its animation quality. But especially starting from later BFDI and BFDIA, it does a significantly better job with environments than this episode did. But look, there are 6 episodes of the original Object Overlord, all right? Quite a while, right? So I absolutely have to check it out. Episode 2, I'm curious, were they all released 12 years ago? I'm not sure. So this is released on April 21st. Huh. I mean, no, they all say 12 years ago except episode 6, which says 11 years ago. Okay, that's interesting. But yeah, I got cut off again. God damn it. Episode 2 of Object Overload Original. I mean, I don't have to say original because, the reboot didn't have an episode 2. A shocking addition. Bro, I just friggin' looked at the comments of this video to see that the top comment is Animation Epic 12 years ago, saying this show is amazing. Sorry I couldn't voice Dusty this episode. I promise I will from now on. There's such a casualness from these accounts back in the day. But anyways, this is episode 2 of Object Overload, alright, where we have ourselves some team picking and some stuff. So first of all, our winners of the last challenge, beyond just getting to pick the team, they also get an immunity ticket because they are apparently like, wow, this is pretty good, to be honest. Yeah, it's just a very solid challenge performance. You get to pick the teams, and you get to also get an immunity ticket. I mean, that is a big reward, to be honest. But now we end up having ourselves the challenge, which is electric maze. Electric maze. Somebody is gonna be up there guiding you, and you will need to follow their directions and get guided. Okay, cool. I understand that. That's pretty interesting. We have a background, by the way, rework, heavy background rework. This, which makes the episode in general feel better. It was the big problem of the original episode 1, but here you can see mountains and everything, and it's a big improvement to just the vibe, because you can more properly see characters looking at characters and how it is on the environment. Like, for example, when Boombox and Clock are talking, right, you can see one of them faded out in the background, so it doesn't just feel like, yo, this, like, it doesn't just feel like 2 patches of grass. It feels like, oh, the camera is pointing at this person, and now it's pointing at that person, and now it's pointing at this person. Like, there's a more cohesive, like, difference to it. than there is before, which is nice and in general makes the episode feel quite a bit better. So we have ourselves some teams. I like the stuff coming in. The writing is pretty solid for being 12-year-old writing. The writing of this episode, it's all right. It has some flaws, which we'll get into, but it's interesting. We also have an intro, which is quite fun. It's just the characters popping in and the assets of each character popping in and out, and then eventually the object overload logo. But it's a very like basic. It's just kind of the letters on different letters, no, on different colors. Sorry, red and blue. Um, because I guess those are gaming's colors. I mean, not really, but they're the buttons within the colors. So we end up having ourselves the teams, and everybody's in pairs, all right? The pairs are set up extremely conveniently. There is not even a hint of randomness in these pairs. It's just like, yo, what pairs will work? Haha. Let's do the pairs that we already established. Our pairs, like Top Hat and Dusty, or like Globe and Candy, like all of these pairs end up sort of being the ones that are very obviously the ones, or like Tissue and Lighter, it's so obvious, or Boxing Glove and again, what the hell's the name? Boxing Glove is Soccer Ball, yeah. The Alliance as well, all together. Like, what? You telling me that the Alliance and Random are going to be all together? Like, these pairs are hilariously convenient, but okay. Now we head into the up Sky Tower. We like having watchtowers around here, and the characters just have to talk and communicate to their fellas down there. Now, obvious problem. If you have 10 people on one platform and they just have to shout at you down there to understand, that is not gonna do what happens here. What happens here is that somehow every character, first of all, there's a 100% normal communication, even though one of them's all the way up high, one of them's all the way down low, but somehow by just having regular chit chat, everybody understands everything. But yet, despite that, they also don't hear anybody else? Are you telling me that with like 10 pairs working at the same time, we're really gonna have people not speaking to each other, right? And it's like, it's not that it's a bad thing, right? Like, it's an additional piece of challenge, because having to not only focus in on what the directions being said by your teammate are, but also who is saying them and understanding and knowing the voice of your member, right? Then, like, you get to understand. And it makes some interesting details. Like, for example, what if, right? Popcorn, sure, cannot hear Picture's advice, right? Because Picture is the silent contestant. However, they can hear everybody else's advice. And imagine if you're a contestant and you just hear, like, imagine if you were Popcorn and you just heard everybody else saying right to their respective people, and you'd think, okay, I will be going right. Like, it's that type of thing where it's not actually a negative to do people speaking over each other. It's an additional tactical opponent that we're completely ignoring. And also, this maze is a joke. Fun fact, I don't think we get to see anybody actually do a turn in the maze. It was a little bit too high for the payroll of the animation at the time. We didn't quite have the animation budget to have an actual maze shown on screen. Like, we get to see sometimes you're in front of the wall, right? But we never get to see anybody actually do a turn on the maze. We didn't invent that yet, unfortunately. But like, yeah, because I mean, look at how many characters are just like, go forward, and then they randomly made it. Like, if then Bossing Glove just says anything, and then, oh yeah, Soccer Ball just conveniently weaved in and out of the maze at the perfect angles every time. It's like, no, you didn't do that. You just walked forward, because the maze is a walk forward, it's a press forward challenge, right? It's like a hold forward level of Mario Maker. Like, it's just, well, yeah, I mean, it's not a great challenge because I think that there's a lot of limitations, right? It'd be super, like, while I've said that having people talk over each other would be super like it would be what would happen and it would be interesting, but it'd be super complex to do, right? Just the amount of audio editing work that would be needed for something like that is immense. And the amount of animation work to have a more proper maze is also a little bit immense, which makes this show definitely an episode that could have been a remaster of this episode. I think would have been really interesting. I'm not gonna lie, right? Like if in the way that the new episodes, they don't back away from a proper background. They don't back away from a proper showcase, right? We could actually have these components that I'm on about being discussed and utilize those challenge components to make a really interesting episode, right? So I do think that in a reboot setting, we would have a solid episode 2 if it ever were to happen. Is it going to happen? I feel like the answer is no. I'm pretty sure that the answer is that it's not happening. I don't. Okay, to be honest, I have no idea what the current status of Object Overload even is. However, as far as I'm aware, the show was technically not cancelled for good. It was mainly just placed on a infinite hiatus. It's like, yeah, let's go. So, um, uh, let's hope that Object Overload one day will be real because that'd be cool. But it's not gonna. To realistically speaking, it's not gonna. But if it ever comes back, episode 2 is gonna be good. All right, so I'd be happy with that. Episode 3 of Object Overload OG is titled "Set in Stone." Let's go. All right, I just watched the Object Overload episode 3. Actually, I didn't just watch, I watched it a while ago. But set in stone. So we have ourselves quite a lot of chit chatter for this episode. I'm not gonna lie, like the amount of talking, we're certainly talking. And you know what? Take advantage of talking. How do you get an episode to be a bit longer? Get talking. I think interactions are good, they're useful. And we get to hear stuff because, like, if you really think about it from, like, for example, a writing perspective, right? Getting lighter to offer to freaking uh clock the partnership, right? It's not something that is needed. It really isn't. It's not something that we need to have written because it's they're gonna get eliminated and we know that, right? So that is entirely just a bonus scene, and I think it's cool to have these bonus scenes. It gives it a little bit more of a sense of humanity, right, as a show. So I think it's nice what this show is doing. But yeah, I don't know why Lighter gets so upset about people bumping into them. This is like a thing that bullies do. That's like a stereotypical bully thing that I never really understand. Like, what is the psychological thing that makes bullies upset when you bump into them? Like, they're supposedly super strong, right? So I thought, like, bumping into them isn't gonna do anything. So, like, I don't know why bullies are like that. Like, this is not just an object thing. This is just like this is a very general, like, statement. Like a lot of bullies, even like the freaking olden movies, tend to do that. And it's like, but I don't know. It's kind of I always find it kind of weird. But oh well. We have Melanie as sort of the right hand man. I see that apparently it seemed to be a theme with this old Object Overload that Melanie just freaking got stabbed. I guess it's kind of because you can make it a little bit not necessarily gory, but like it's funny in the sense that when Melanie gets stabbed, red comes out because of the watermelon liquid, rather than somebody else with like a crayon or something. I don't know if you can yellow. Like, and it would be liquid, right? Comparatively speaking to other people, where so I see why they do that to Melanie, right? Because it can be like, it's blood, rather than with others, whereas like, it's metal, you know. A clock ends up rejecting the alliance. It's such an interesting detail to have the clock actually turn, like just like to have the clock be a functional clock, because like that's not a thing. Like clock themselves, like even in like teapot, doesn't move. Like the handles of the clock don't really move majority of the time. This clock moves, and it moves fast. If that's how time is passing, We are going like what, an hour a minute. I don't know. We're acting fast around here. I ain't gonna lie. Um. So yeah. Then we end up having, yeah, again, we reject it, and then Gamey comes in. Gamey's interesting. I don't know, like, I think they're the only character to have these side profiles, these detailed side profiles, because I don't see them with anybody else. This is only like a Gamey thing. Gamey manages to proper turn, and you can see it. And it's another interesting thing. I don't think they had this side profile in episode 1. I think they showed it off once or twice in episode 2, but now they're getting more confidently into it for the next episodes. Then we head into the elimination area where we have everybody else be safe. Thanks for because we have a contestant vote, right? Um, our contestant vote has we just declare everyone who's safe. So it's a contested vote, but announced in a viewer vote way, which makes it very uninteresting because there's not that many voters, which means that we're just kind of ending up having everyone be like, yo, team of 1 million people, like 10 of you are safe immediately off the get-go. You gotta show it vote by vote, dude. It's way better for contested voting. Showing it vote by vote, significantly better. I'm not gonna lie. Showing a contestant vote in a viewer vote style, not very entertaining. I'm gonna be honest. But then we have ourselves Christmas presents randomly. When was this show released? September. I don't. That's a. I don't think this is very topical. I don't think this is very topical in September, but okay. Then we have contestants pop out of them. And these are contestants that are present in the reboot of Object Overlord. I completely forgot about these people. I'm gonna be honest. I don't know why I did it. I don't know how I didn't clock that they were missing. I'm gonna be honest, but I completely didn't clock that they were missing. They're Tiki, which I called like Totem, I think, the other time. There's Fly SWAT, which is also there's the television character, right? That I even mentioned a couple of times. I don't know how the hell I forgot about them. And then there's Loki. Loki is both is not back so far in the Object Overload. I mean, maybe it was a plan that they were gonna come back, right? Because again, a reboot's a reboot, so maybe we were just switching the starter characters, and then these people that showed up here to from the present would have shown up in episode 3 of the reboot. I'm not sure how exactly we were planning out the reboot, to be honest, but that's what I'm guessing that they were doing, to be honest, because it would make sense, to be honest. Like it's like fair. By the way, sorry there's people talking in the background. There definitely are, but oh well. Then we have Loki, who's kind of a crazy character. But yeah, they figure out that they're in a competition show. You see, I don't think the television here is much of a television with like channels and stuff at the other time, because they'd be like, oh yes, I've heard of what you're where they aired. You should know what a competition show is. Like that, like they air on TV. Anyhow, after the intermission of all of these fellas, we end up having our elimination, which is lighter. Lighter ends up getting eliminated, which I mean, yeah, duh. That is a pretty obvious elimination. Like, there's a certain point where, a lot of people, right, they do contestant voting because it leads to a different scenario, right? You can write a character a bit differently and have them still be safe because the contestants wouldn't vote against them, but the viewers maybe would, because how dare someone be mildly mean, right? However, there's also the problem is that, of course, the character being mean also just means that they are a mean character, just like overall. And in this case, it's absolutely GG. I mean, there is nothing playing for it. So Lighter is just absolutely gone from the get go, right? And then they get shot out of the cannon into Mars, which is friggin' crazy. I'm not even gonna lie, but it's cool. I kind of like that idea, having like an entire empty, barren planet. So like it's a wasteland, but I mean, I guess you could chill there. It's kind of different than like a tiny loser chamber in BFDI, right? Which these are the comparisons they gotta be making. Like a tiny loser chamber in BFDI, where it's like it's kind of okay. I mean, it's funny because they get to all sent to this one box, but it's kind of boring in the sense that they're literally just on this box. They can't do anything, right? But at least when they're literally on a planet and they're like solo, then they can at least try to build, find material, do anything within the planet. Like there's room to run around and you can stay and wait for somebody else to join you. Maybe you can run away and try to do anything, right? Like there's a metric where you can like actually, sort of deal with the situation in a different way and actually do something pretty interesting with it. So I mean, I'm not sure if they're going to do that. They don't have many episodes too. We only have 6 of Object Overload until we are bye bye. But yeah, we have. By the way, Gamey just goes like, yeah. Yeah, 4 contestants, you can join, so love that. That means that we are officially currently the amount of contestants eliminated in the show is -3, which is great. We always love it when contestant counts somehow go up at the 4th episode. We're gonna have more contestants. No, to reach the amount of contestants that we'd had in episode 1 is gonna take episode 5 because no, is it? It's gonna take episode like yeah, it's gonna take like episode 5 for us to reach where we were at the start. Like we're making negative progress. I don't know why do shows keep doing this? Why do shows do this? I don't know, but okay, good job. Overload. We have an an overloaded cast. Ayo, got him. But yeah, I do like the. To be fair, I like freaking Tiki quite a bit because it makes a very interesting cast. Like a friggin' contrast because you see how, for example, they're like, "Yo, Tiki, you nice, right?" And it's like, yeah, because Tiki actually collaborates. The two sides actually collaborate and agree on stuff. The cherries, right? One is a heavy disagreeer with the other, right? Which makes quite a lot of different like situation, different scenarios and like makes an interesting diversion in the category. You can properly compare what functional duality is compared to misfunctional duality, right? Which I think is pretty cool. For some reason, I found this interaction with Loki, staring, like being like, "Oh, do you want me to get your limbs back for you?" Kind of interesting because you literally also don't have arms. What? Like, okay, I mean, if it was somebody with arms, then it's like, oh, so someone steal your limbs, I'll get them back. Wait, but you also don't have this. Go get your own limbs back. What are you doing? Like, nah. But I mean, I guess they don't have legs, which is a little bit weirder because they're like the only character that doesn't. But I mean, I don't know. Anyways, if you've noticed, I've not talked about the challenge at all because this challenge is boring, so I'm still gonna not talk about it. Flyswaw ends up joining the alliance, and then we have ourselves the rules of the alliance, which are to vote same contestant, uh, never backs up other members. Great rules. Shout out to the alliance. It's good. But no, yeah, the challenge is okay. Let's actually talk about the challenge a little bit. I'm joking. The challenge is to sculpt what you want. No, to sculpt gamey, and then the best sculpture wins. This challenge is not interesting because there's not like a degree of understanding that we have of these characters based on whatever we have, right? Like we have an understanding of these characters, but like really take a look at an object, okay? And take a look at episode 1. You can't answer the question, would they sculpt? It's not a question. You don't get the information, that category of information from watching a show, right? And yeah, this is one of those challenges that I always kind of find a little bit weird. Like a sculpting challenge where it's like, how do they suddenly know how to sculpt? It's kind of like when people do challenges that's like build a house or build a building, whatever. It's like, what? You just know this? That takes a lot of knowledge and effort, right? So it's like everybody just sort of has that knowledge. Everybody can build a house from scratch like that. You could do that, like that's the thing they do in the shows, and it's like, wait, what? But so there's not like there's not like the basis of like, oh, you would know how to do this but you wouldn't, right? It's either everybody knows how to do it or nobody knows how to do it. right? Because they just push everyone to know how to do it. Because if they make some know and some don't know, then it's completely subjective and it doesn't really make any sense, right? Eventually, our sculptures end up okay. However, unfortunately, we have the one of them ends up getting massively spray painted by top hat a little bit, but it was mainly I think by Candy, right? So that team loses. Must say, not a great display here from this team, from Clock's team. It wasn't great. Top Hat is way too condescending as well. But in general, I mean, they both did pretty decent sculptures. Just one of them had a little bit of a problem in having a paint splatter. But they were. Oh no, it was Locky that actually was painting it. But yeah, that team ends up being going up for elimination. As usual, we don't get to vote. Or our viewers from 13 years ago don't get to vote because we have the contestant voting. So, all right. I mean, this episode was okay. We, however, have delayed the show by minimum 4 episodes by introducing 4 more characters. And the challenge was kind of not interesting. The writing was pretty interesting. I did enjoy seeing those additional interactions that, despite not being necessary, were cool. Let's head over to episode 4 of the Old Object Overload, Branching Out. Alright, so that was episode 4 of Object Overload, Branching Out. So, we have ourselves an interesting little thing here to start off. Very interesting writing, alright? So, we have some or initial chit chatter is from the team, is from Team Time, as they are eventually worded. You can tell that this is also a detail that they've now brought over. It's really interesting to have watched the reboot first because you can see the details that were brought over to the reboot section by section, right? We took the main details from these 6 episodes and we plunked them into the reboot. One thing that I do find it very funny about the reboot is that there are somehow more people credited on this than there are people credited on the reboot episode 1, which is crazy, by the way. But we have some initial chit chat about who voted who. Like, oh, you voted for Crayon. Oh no, yeah. Well, I voted for Crayon, right? And it gives us as a viewer this false sense of knowledge, right? That we thought Crayon was getting out, but it's actually because we only got to hear from the people that just naturally talk to each other, right? So we got to see that there were 4 Crayon votes. However, those were all of them, and everybody else would have top out, right? So we end up doing a switch up here, which is pretty cool. I gotta say. I think that it was a pretty cool writing tactic. However, it does, in my opinion, feel like a half cop out for the fact that we're not seeing vote by vote. Because there's a reason why showing a vote by vote is much better, and it's because you get to build up that suspense. Here you're not showing it vote by vote. However, you're sort of half doing it because you're making the contestants say to each other before who they voted for. So we're still kind of going vote by vote. We're just doing it in a very contrived way where the actual reveal of the vote is not vote by vote, right? It's different. So that's kind of what is going on here, even though it's not great. But yeah, absolutely, showing it vote by vote would have been way better for this series than the way that it currently works. But Crayon doesn't get out despite being annoying. I must say, in my personal opinion, Crayon does not instill me fear. Everybody's like, "Oh, you're so bossy. We gotta do everything that you say." Do you? Crayon has not shown me the power of being. There's not shown much strength. The amount of power that has been given from Crayon into the people, not really that much. It's Melanie's like, "Oh, you made me do everything that you say." Well, what is Crayon gonna do if you don't grab the anvil? What is she gonna maybe she is super buff and super strong. We don't get to see it. Oh, she got revenge by kicking them. No, that's because of mispreparation. That's because the person wasn't prepared to get kicked, right? So they weren't ready. when in the other case it is. So Crandall is somebody with a lot of fear. So as far as bossy characters go, like it's really weird how she's like the threat. Oh no, you gotta listen to her. Cause like, do you? It's kind of weird. But anyhow, eventually at our elimination, we end up having Top Hat eliminated, and eventually they end up going into the moon. No, the Mars. Sorry, they end up going into Mars. We get to see, some of our friendships build. Right, we get to see Snow Globe and Popcorn. We also get to see Candy and Globe and how they have that toxic sort of friendship going on, where like Candy will constantly hang out with Globe despite the fact that they keep like insulting Globe all of the time, right? Because it's a very interesting type of relation that those two have, right? Because it's like, yeah, it's when that like hate it's when that like it's banter, but it's like, I'll keep coming back though. It's like super bossy. It's like, for example, how Crayon probably still is gonna demand Melanie to do things, even though Melanie was like, I'm quitting, screw up, right? And it's like, no, okay, so even though you did this, I will make, as a bigger person, I'm gonna do the decision to keep hanging out with you, right? And they just do that constantly, right? They lash out and then go like, well, I have decided to unlash out. Lashes out, no, I changed my mind. Lash out, like they just do that constantly, and it's kind of interesting. But anyhow, we eventually have, as I said, Top Hat going to the Mars, and then ending up with Lighter, who has just freaking made sculptures on Mars. Really, you couldn't do anything better. Okay, I mean, I guess I don't know. I guess maybe I'm expecting too much from people in Mars, but at least they were doing something. So that's fair. And then our challenge is tree. Big, giant. What is this tree called? You'll be climbing. Hold on. The great tree, because you can apparently teleport, by the way, which is interesting. Um, but we have ourselves a great tree. Climb it. If you get to the flag, you'll have both immunity and also be safe, which is pretty nice. Of course, a double up. Only one person has to make it to the top, unlike a different challenge where, unlike that stuff like the May challenge, where everybody had to make it. No, here only one person has to actually make it to the top for them to be safe. All right. So our teams get named: Team Toon and Team Time. Good names. I like those names, to be honest. And then various people try some different tactics. The tactic which I'm gonna say, the tactic which I had originally like imagined was to actually bring the contestant cannon over. Like that was something which I thought about before they actually brought it out. I was like, yo, maybe they should try to get the cannon to shoot up, right? Because climbing is gonna be very challenging for somebody with arms, and then so many contestants have no arms that, especially for those contestants, is probably a better idea to just simply try to fetch the cannon, right? Especially considering the teams are so large, I would probably do a division of tactics, like have the contestant with arms figuring a way to climb, like together, like kind of tactic it out, have one person, I guess, scouting up, and the other one doing that. And then have the armless contestant probably try to do something like grab the cannon or figure out a way from afar to get by, right? Like for example, the alliance, sure, they do something, but if they could have, for example, I don't know, found really high ground afar, Paper Airplane could have glided over to the finish. You see, like something like that, that level of tactic could have potentially worked. And the thing about the contestant cannon is that it shoots at a high speed. However, like we saw, for of course, the contestant cannon has currently shot two people to Mars. So you have to be very careful with how you end up like getting shot. However, the contestant cannon also, of course, shot everybody to their platforms in channel number one. So yes, it's a super, super, super powerful cannon, but it's not necessarily like a forcibly like super strong cannon. Like it doesn't have to shoot you into the stratosphere, basically. Um, but eventually they end up doing all that. Kite has the idea of trying to fly over. They, for some reason, this specific subset of people end up being fixated on getting everybody else up. When you see that's not what we needed. Like Kite has a pretty smart idea. Yo, I can fly because I'm a kite if I'm attached to a string. which I mean, true, but it's like, how are we supposed to get there? You don't go up there. No, you're supposed to stay there. Like, it's better if Kite just tries to do the challenge. I mean, presumably, okay, technically the best thing to do would probably be to do what? To repeat multiple. Sorry, I hate the microphone. My bad. But like, sorry, it would be to bring Kai up, then they climb, bring the string, replace, run again, right? It could be to do it multiple times. However, they do it once and then kind of give up. They don't. They let go of the string, so it's not exactly great. For some reason, the XanyLeaves logo seems to had heart eyes for Pearl very near the end, which is definitely interesting. I feel like it's kind of weird. When you consider that that is, like pretty much a self-insert. I don't know. It's a little weird to have that character do that, but I mean, okay, I guess. I don't know. But eventually, the canon strategy does end up working. However, unfortunately, they decide to shoot out Disc. Why? I don't know, because they just felt like it. And Disc just so happens to be sort of like breaks, just broke, landed at the flag too strongly. It's technically that team's bad because they ended up choosing a more fragile than usual contestant to go up there. However, at the same time, they also like. I don't think they're in a good spot either way because there aren't that many contestants that would have actually managed to withstand it. Like I don't know. So many of them would have also been cooked. But eventually, Snow Globe, on like the second time of trying, ends up managing to eventually just climb. Like there weren't many Snow Globe didn't really do that many tactics for actually climbing. They would just like climb. The team was like, "Yo, what should we do?" And Snow Globe was already like, "Yo, I'm going. I'm going." So I'm glad to see that the most functional tactic was the tactic of just not really doing anything at all. It was a tactic of not thinking too much and just being like, "Oh, the challenge is to climb the tree. I'm gonna climb the tree," right? Like it really was not all that big of a deal, and indeed, it didn't end up being it. And for the first time, Team Toon is up for elimination. Who's gonna get out? I have no idea. I'm really feeling the lack of a voting screen. I'm not gonna lie. Like the team is gigantic, but I don't even get to remember the options of who can get eliminated, right? Like even if like even we need like a full team shot because even if I don't like get to vote, I still like to see who the options are so I can like look at it. But I'm not even gonna predict 'cause I don't remember who's up or Elam, right? So that's why I've not really been predicting. Anyways, I think it's time to head ourselves over into the fifth episode of Object Overload, which is titled In Deeper Waters, alright? Let's watch it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it while after watching it. All right, let's go. All right, so I have just watched episode 5 of Object Overload. We're getting there. We're getting to the late to the furthest episode. I don't really know what to call it, but we're getting there. um so that was In Deeper Water. So all right, let's talk about this opening scene, all right? So basically, as we saw, this marble fella is enamored by Pearly and is like, "Yo, you want to be like, friend maybe, because we could be, I like you and you, so I mean, we could do strategic partnership, but like you're cool and like you're pretty, no, not pretty. I mean, you're pretty friendly, yeah, that." So that's pretty much what Marble does. Okay, so I was getting confused, all right, so because I, for some reason, right, had this memory. Okay, I had this memory from a while ago, right? That this character Marble, right? I had this thing, and you can hear me use that memory in the last section, being like XanyLeaves logo. I was like, that is what I looks like. I swear, right? Because it was I don't know. I have that memory of that being it. So I did some research. All right. I took a quick stop because I wanted to be able to figure out from where it came from, right? And as the trivia arrives, you can see that the trivia in the Object Overload wiki, okay, which is, I mean, again, you can't trust wikis too much, but you can kind of notice how you see the current mascot of the Overload can be seen on the banner. Marble used to represent now in the Object Show community, such as Cameron Object Lockdown. as well as objects created main object OC. So you can kind of see where I got it from. So basically, especially from me who knows about who knew about other objects back in the day, but wasn't necessarily, of course, a big look into it. I was like, yo, who is this? But then you see Marble every time that when we mention XanyLeaves, and it's like, okay, so this is XanyLeaves, and it looks pretty distinct, right, like a logo of some kind, rather than anything else. So that's why I thought this was a XanyLeaves logo rather than just a character called Marble, right? Um, so I think that should hopefully clarify what was going on, okay, in that aspect. So because I was finding it a little bit weird how, like, if you were to have a character that's pretty much self-titled after you and then have them get into a relationship with somebody else, that'd be weird. However, this is the other way around, right? Like, you make a character and it just so happens to be your favorite, and then you turn into your OC. Okay, sure, why not, right? That makes way more sense than whatever the hell I was imagining it. All right, like, it's stuff from 12 years ago. We get to it, but eventually we end up having Fly Swap promoted to Alliance co-leader. Let's go. You can there's a lot of free smart vibes going on here. I mean, of course, in just the way that this alliance function is like, oh, Toofy is the leader, self-elected, and there's roles, whatever, within the alliance. Like, very pencil. It's a very pencil aesthetic, right? And they just kind of end up doing that. But hey, we getting inspired back in this time. That makes sense. We got a couple of intel here and there on some characters, right? Like, we get to hear about bringing the crumbled up the pebble crumbled up paper, and it's like, oh, remember, I used to have friends. It's like, wait, oh, okay, what's happened here, right? um but it ends up being a little bit, no, tissue, sorry, ends up being like, yo, um I used to have friends. So you see, it's setting up lore in that perspective, right? Then we end up having some other fellas, right? Like with Globe. Apparently, the stripes for Candy are green now. I mean, to be fair, in my opinion, they look better as green. Low key, green stripes kind of work. I mean, it looks like mint, which I'm not sure how good that would taste, but it looks pretty good in terms of just literal, like, visual. So I'm not sure what Globy. Globy kind of being mean though, Like, okay, if Globy, like, if you get it mistreated, right? If you get it mistreated, then, like, that's that. But, like, there's a certain point where it's just like, okay, I mean, you can say that the stripes look good, it's not, they don't really look that bad. Then we have ourselves an elimination prize. Is our muffins, which is a pretty solid prize because last time it was 12-year-old lemons, which I guess would make them 24-year-old lemons now. Isn't that crazy? That's, like, crazy to think about. But yeah, they end up chilling out. We actually get to see a couple of the contestants explain their votes before heading into the finish, which, again, it frustrates me because we could just be showing it vote by vote. It'd be better. But that's not what we're doing. We're just inching over there, being like, oh, we gotta do the system, but I realize that the other system is better, so I'm gonna sprinkle in elements of the other system by showing what people thought of the vote, but only in the final two scenarios to build up the suspense, right? I was like, bro. um, but eventually Disc ends up getting eliminated because they threw, I mean, they didn't throw the challenge, they were thrusted into the wrong spot, right? It's kind of like if a team is challenged is to do a performance, right, and they have some possible performance, but they send up the guy who doesn't know how to perform, and then that guy performs badly. Yes, it's his fault, right, that he screwed up the performance. Yes, that's true. However, it is also an equal fault of the people that chose to put in there compared to everybody else, right? Like, well, it was this fault that they cracked when hitting the pole, right? However, while that is the fault of Disc technically, right, for doing that, it is equally the fault of everybody who chose to put disc there for not realizing that they're a disc and not a frisbee. And even then, a frisbee probably breaks anyways because of the high speed, right? So this is not great. The ping pong ball gets quite sad at the boxing glove for leaving. I find it interesting how ping pong ball and Glovey no, sorry, and Pearly end up being two of the characters that don't actually make an immediate return to the reboot, because those are the two characters with the most boring theoretical designs, right? Because like one of them is just a ball and the other one is just a ball. So I wonder if that was maybe partially the reason that they got canned at the start of the reboot. Again, I'm not sure if we were possibly having everybody in Object Overload reboot, like that is the cast through and through, or if the reboot was also going to factor in with the additional people joining, right? Um, and then they were going to get thrusted into it, and we just change who joined later. I don't know, but apparently every 4 eliminations we're going to have a double elimination because there are 31 people, dude. 31 people is a lot for an object show that it's 2013. That's a big number, you know? Like 31 it's high. It's a high amount today, you know. Like, of course, the largest cast shows have over 40, right? And of course, maybe at 64. But like getting the 31 being on the overload number is crazy. Like, there are just so many people. And does it balance the screen time well between them? No, it really doesn't. But it can't, because it only has about 10 minutes per episode. But it does at least focus on those who matter, right? In general, it does a good job at putting the focus on people rather than giving everybody 3 seconds of screen time and then you don't feel satisfied about anybody. At least in this case, we have placed our focus on like proper the proper set of characters that are dictating the play that day, you know. So that way we you have like some people get put to the silent for an episode or two. They should hopefully, of course, like basically there should be a rotation of important characters when you have a show with a big cast, right? You have to have a rotation, like, okay, these people are doing this stuff this way. Then the next episode we talk about these people, and then these people, you know, like there has to be a rotation. It has to be like a circle, right? And we follow that circle around. Um, but anyways, what were we on about? Oh yeah, double elimination every 4 eliminations, which makes it go faster, I guess, by like 5 episodes. I mean, it's still gonna take a while, but no, I see why. Because theoretically, if you have 31, you're gonna have around like what 30, like I don't know how many episodes where we have, but basically, by having double elimination every 4 episodes, I think it roughly gets total amount of episodes that Object Overload would have, like 25, which would be a BFDI number. So I'm presuming that we're aiming for the BFDI number of episodes roughly by having those more consistent double eliminations. Um, so yeah, eventually we end up having some challenge, because our challenge ends up being to bring the boat to the finish line, but across the river to the finish line, swim the boat, do everything. They're very good at steering the boat despite having no way to actually steer it properly. But okay, that's interesting. Like they have motor engines, but they don't have like turning. How do they turn the boat? They don't have like they didn't do that. But eventually, of course, the motorboat team, which is the team that won Team Time, ends up getting a motorboat for their capabilities of winning the previous challenge. Dude, there are a lot of advantages for whoever wins. To be like, this is very much so a theoretical rich get richer show. Like if this was a competition show like with real life, you know, like in terms of real life, like if these types of advantages were given out to in real life challenges, like the stronger would just get stronger. You know, it'll be so hard to recover as a losing team. But eventually they go over, accidentally twist the sign, which means that the weaker team, that the team behind, right, the team Toon, end up going the wrong direction. We end up messing in the waterfall. Everybody has to jump off. Kite and Toaster fall off. It's a whole mess. They don't have a boat anymore. So they decide to go back around and find a gigantic log. which, however, just so thankfully happens that Tiki manages to know how to carve into a boat. And it's like, oh my god, that's so cool. You can do that. And you see, this is exactly what I mean. From a couple of episodes ago. Set in stone, right? I thought, oh yeah, everybody for some reason is a sculptor and knows how to sculpt, right? And it's like, it's entirely just for the convenience of the challenge that everybody now knows how to do it. But you put them here, right? You put it here, and apparently nobody knows how to carve out a boat, even though it's a surprisingly similar thing, right? But then it's like, I mean, it's not similar, but like, it's that type of skill set that if you know how to do one, you'd expect how to do the other. But nobody knows how to do that for some reason, right? And it's entirely for the writing convenience. That's why I despise these like specific skill sets where it's like, okay, I mean, it makes sense for Tiki to maybe know compared to everybody else. But it's like, why does everybody else know how to score? When did they learn to do that, right? Like, that's the type of thing that annoys me about writing. And I go, I'm not holding it back against this show. Like, I don't hold it back against this show because this show's old as hell. I hold it as a general complaint in general, right? And also, by the way, this team, there's no way they win. I'm sorry. The fact that this team wins is hilarious. Like, I'm sorry. They had to go through the wall. Like, the motor team was just had to go in a straight line. They had nothing better to do. They had to go in a straight line with a motor. Meaning the other team had time to freaking. I'm sorry. How did they do it? They managed to go the wrong direction, have their boat fall off a waterfall, then they managed to go over, back around, well, I guess walk back, find a log, carve it into a boat, and bring the boat now to the correct direction without a motor, and somehow they make it faster. Huh. I am sensing a little bit of conveniency. I'm not gonna lie, because that is bullshit. There's no way. I'm sorry, there's no way. The other team should have just won. Like, there's just the fact that that team loses is insanity. That's extremely convenient. Eventually, Kite and Toaster happen to be down at the Death Valley, and Kite eventually gets stolen away, gets caught in a trap. Oh no! That's not epic. By the way, I'm glad to see that the comment from Animation Epic, sorry for not voicing Dusty this episode, is that, we actually did, we kept true to our words. Adam Cass is the voice of Dusty, which I think is pretty fun. Um, and yeah, that is episode 5. Oh yeah, sorry. Post credits, Melody just died. I'll tell you, the reason why they do Melody is because they could do technically gore without doing gore. It's kind of smart, But anyways, now let's go into episode 6 and the no, well, it's not the latest because the reboot's the latest. And the furthest episode, the last episode of the old object overload, is titled Lost and Found. It's also pretty big as far as old object overload episodes go. It's the longest. Let's watch it. Let's talk about it, and I guess we'll close off our piece on object overload episode 50. Woo! All right, so that is episode 6 and the last proper episode of the Olsen Object Overload. Ever since then, of course, the series was cancelled for sake of the reboot, and then the reboot, of course, was cancelled then on after. Well, cancelled, forever postponed, but it's pretty much cancelled, right? So this is the furthest that will probably ever get to realistically see into object overload itself, unless there's some massive like switch up in mentality. But like this, there's no way. But you know what? I think it's a pretty solid episode because it's exactly that type of episode that happens that starts to make you think a little bit about a broader picture of the show, right? Like, even though we were still super early days in the show, it's like this episode was setting up a lot of the groundwork that was gonna possibly help out the series. It was starting to set up individual character arcs. It was starting to set up for the future, because as it goes with shows, okay, all right, so in my opinion, shows need to, for their first batch of episodes, have mainly them not be too serious, right? Because we need to get introduced to everybody. We need to see good amounts of time of everybody. That way we can understand, okay, you are this, you are that, and you are that, right? Okay, that has to be the first batch of episodes. And then there is after that initial batch, you need to set up your storylines, right? At the beginning, you just need to set up your characters. Then you have to set up your storylines, right? You have to figure out who's going to be in the alliances, right? Who is going to be the villains, who is going to be the heroes, who is going to have interesting backstories, right? Who's going to have friends and stuff, who's going to have revenges and all that stuff. And we were here. We were at this moment. We were trying to set up storylines within the past episode and also here. And this episode does a lot of work in doing that. Mainly starting off here with Kite. Ended up waking up over on the island where Tiki's or the Tiki family ends up being various totems of different styles, right? Everybody's called Tiki, but eventually they end up finding Kai and being like, "Yo, we kept watching it on the television, which is apparently was also chilling there on that island, all right, which is kind of fun." So they got to like be a family, and they ended up watching, and they see Tiki being in the show and everything, and they get to I mean, okay, I don't know if they got to necessarily watch Tiki on the show because television went along with them as part of the Christmas gift, right? As part of the gift. So I think it's something like that. So I don't think they ever got to actually see and like root for Tiki in the proper way. However, they were present there. But you see, like, this already sets up. It's like, okay, Tiki is this character, has this family, has this island, right? And also in this episode, you can sort of see, right, like this show trying to start cashing in on its locations, right? Because in this episode we mentioned this place, in this episode we mentioned that place, in this episode we mentioned this place. We're starting to form a broader map of our locations of where we are, right? We have a waterfall, we have this place, we have that place, we have this thing, right? Like now that this show has started having elements to it, we're now starting to call back to those elements, right? Like this like initial like where we were definitively past the ultra early game, right? The starting game here by this episode, which I think is pretty cool. But then eventually we end up having both, of course, Kite and Toaster go missing. A couple of people are trying to find them, and eventually that ends up being the challenge. A couple of additional notes. This video is in 360p maximum resolution, which is weird. I don't know how. Yeah, okay, so like to be fair, this video being in 360p resolution wouldn't be something that wouldn't be something that I wouldn't expect. Like, oh, it's 360p. Okay, sure, right? Like that makes sense. Why not? However, like it's old, so it can be 360p. Even a lot of videos nowadays are 360p in nature, right? But like I find it weird because how is this 360p, but the other videos are in HD, right? Because you can't increase the quality of the video afterwards, can you? You can't go like through like 5 years later be like, yo, render me an HD. Like, I don't think YouTube does that. Or do they do that? I don't think they do that. I mean, I don't know. Because YouTube doesn't let you, like, replace a video. So, yeah, I don't know how it would render in HD, right? Which is why I'm confused at how episodes 1 to 5 have the HD variants of themselves. But episode 6 doesn't have all of the quality options when it was released. Well, of course, it's newer than the other one. So, how would it not, right? Like, theoretically, it should, if any of them should have the higher quality, it should be this one, no? Like, that makes way more sense. But apparently not. So, okay. And already in this episode and a couple of the last ones, like you start to see the art style that ends up being like the signature style of the show itself, right? And that you see playing all around the reboot of it, starts to settle in with like the more complex little early AI faces, right? The movement style, I'm still trying to figure out how to describe this animation style because it's very noticeable, but I don't know how to describe it. Basically, imagine the characters move, okay, in a three segment style, you know? if that makes any sense. Like they always try to move in three ways, you know? Like for example, a character points up, left, and then down and wobbles, And it's like that all happens smoothly. Like every time a character moves, it's like imagine a smooth movement, hand up, then hand pointing to the right, and then eventually you wobble back down. It's like that type of animation style. That's like it's three segmented, is the way that I'd best call it. Because I don't know how else to call it, but like that is what I mean basically. Um, but like that is like the signature style that this show ends up having. Eventually, we end up bringing our new co-leader of the alliance into our tree house, or the clubhouse, which exists now for some reason. But they eventually decide to have an alliance meeting. All right, they decide to have an alliance meeting, and in this alliance meeting, then they're like, "Yo, we should get a new person into this alliance, all right? Because why I don't I guess they just wanted to, there's additional power in the game or whatever. Like I mean, they're already a pretty strong force in the game, considering like there's not really any other alliance of like proper way, right? They're not really a proper. They're already a pretty strong. They already got a pretty strong hold on like alliances because like Marvel does have that alliance, and they do point it out, right? Oh yeah, Marvel has this alliance with friggin' Pearly, which by the way, we don't even get to see them in this episode. I don't think like they literally don't show up, which again still implies that like yeah, this show definitely has a little bit of an issue with screen time. Because okay, it's so hard to manage screen time with so many characters because it's like you cannot have a character just disappear. You can't just do that. But you also cannot have the evened out screen time because then nobody has screen time, right? Like it's like that's kind of the complication with this system. It just ends up being kind of complicated, especially when there's not too much time between episodes. And even then, in episodes like this, we're starting to try to pick ourselves up in time to get more screen time. But even then, some characters just don't appear. They just don't have time. But eventually, Fly Swat ends up having the idea of inviting Fly no, of inviting Boxing Glove. You see, try to take this example. All right, after they say that it will be an advantageous. What is the 3 segment animation that plays? Right, we play like for example, the Toofy goes, rubs hands, points, and then moves hand down. You see, like it's a 3 segment movement. That's what I mean. I don't know if this doesn't make sense. I'm super sorry, but like I don't know how to describe it. But that's what it is. All right. But eventually, yeah, they decide to get Boxing Glove into the alliance because it would be a strategic advantage to have somebody who's just literally powerful, right? And apparently has so much strength that everybody's extremely scared of them. It's fun to have a little bit of a character where like everybody's scared of them like a golf ball. However, they're actually just nice, and they're like, yo, I don't know whether he thinks I'm like bad. I mean, I'm powerful, but that's not my fault, right? Clock eventually gets super upset because 2 people are going home. But let's just talk about the 2 people going home because the elimination ends up happening in a little bit. So we end up having the 2 eliminated contestants being Crayon and freaking Tissue. So those end up being the characters going home. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I'm not sure which one got the most votes, but as far as which ones were gonna get votes, I think they were both very valid options because Tissue, of course, pushed everyone away, being like, I don't want friends, I don't care, I don't give a shit. And Crayon was like, oh my gosh, you guys are like so bad. No, she didn't say that, but I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, you guys are so gonna like, I'm gonna like get you back for this. And it's like, bro, I mean, you just gotta, it's time to go. We get that backstory again here on Tiki. the Tiki family. It's nice. I enjoy it. I enjoy seeing families personally. I kind of like the idea, the concept, in my opinion, of object show, like of the objects and objects actually having families from time to time. I think it's cool. Like, well, it makes perfect sense for them to not. I think it's cool for them to have family. I think it's kind of interesting, right? So I don't really mind that. Um, However, now we end up having our challenge, which is to, of course, fetch freaking Kai and fetch kite and toaster. Yes, I don't know why I am bad with hashtag words. But then the idea is simply being, yo, they fell down the waterfall. They're probably down the waterfall. And indeed, they end up being down the waterfall. It is not that hard. But the first people that come in are the alliance members who decide, yo, if we fly if I'm a fly on top of the paper airplane down the waterfall, that way, we can both scout it out from above and just literally go to the nearest land where we'll probably have landed. One of the things about Fly Swat is that this guy is just generally actually smart. It's kind of difficult to have a character that is just genuinely smart in an object show. Like, that doesn't actually happen. Like, a character that's just actually smart and has good ideas, and the ideas work. Because for this case, we have the idea, yo, we're gonna go down there. And however, they get rewarded because they thought quickly, they thought smartly, and they had a good plan, right? It's that level of smartness that's like, yo, we have good strategies, but we're using them, and they end up that the good strategies are actually good. Like, the good strategies end up actually being good, and they actually end up being useful, which is nice because in a character like with like Golfball and BFDI or whatever. Like, the thing about Golfball is that she's smart, right? Like, she's smart and she comes up with a lot of plans, right? But the thing is that that's played as a gag, right? We're like, haha, the ultra complex plan didn't work. But it's nice to actually have a character that has plans and a function. And I'm saying it's nice to have, as if this show isn't 12 years old. Look, I'm taking a look at this show from a first time viewing experience, all right, because I think it deserves it. Considering it is one of the big ones. I mean, like, I'm sorry, this episode 6 has 2.3 million views. We're talking episode 6. The sixth one. That's a lot for a sixth episode, having more views than what pretty much nearly no other audio show has even reached ever. Like, it's this show has hit the big numbers, bro. I'm telling you. Like, the only shows to have hit over 2 million. What even hit it? The Russian one, that's controversial, did hit it many times. I think one's most viewed episode probably did, although it's kind of up there. And then Animatic Battle hit it on the 3 episodes, the original 3, right? But like many other shows did it. I'm definitely forgetting one of them, but I'm super sorry. But like the shows, it's hard to reach these numbers, man. Like, yeah, this is very impressive numbers. Again, the episode's old, but like, even when it comes to the old stuff, it peaks. It is the highest caliber of the highest caliber. And you know what? Yeah, for object shows from the time, it definitely stands out. It definitely stands out as one that does somewhat withstand the test of time. Debatably even better than II. Early II season 2, debatably worse than this. I'm not gonna lie. Like, I see why the freaking Jack and Jellyman Animation Epic were kind of involved, because like it's good. It's very promising show for the time. It is one of the most promising things that was on the market. So yeah, I mean, it's just cool. Anyways, Fly Swat ends up getting caught in a trap as well because nobody looks at the floor. Apparently that's banned, and they end up doing that. Then apparently they go get some vines from the. So who gets some vines? Candy and Popcorn end up getting vines from the grape tree. Meanwhile, the team with Tiki in it ends up deciding to swim down using that log boat. The other team tries to steal their boat, fails massively because Tiki is very good at fighting. That was one of the pre-established things. You see, we're starting to use pre-established things, like this was kind of the episode where we probably sat down in the writing department and was like, yo, I've actually like done things now, so I can like use them again, and do callbacks, which is nice because it feels rewarding for a show when it does callbacks. If you're making a show, do callbacks, all right? Absolutely recommend, because like, callbacks are good in this later, like, as soon as you get past like episode 5 or whatever, because it gives you that sense of the fact that you're watching an evolving show, right? Like, when you're watching a show and it feels like it's evolving right in front of you, right? Like, it's good. Because it's like, oh yeah, things aren't how they were before, and I know because I watched it. So you see, it's like, it's rewarding to watch it, because it's like, if you can skip an episode and the only thing that changes is there's less people, it's just not as cool, right? But it's like, oh, you're missing these details because in this episode they did this, and in this episode they did that, right? Which is the nice thing. So absolutely put continuity in your show. This applies at all levels. It's a pretty good trick. It's a pretty good trick for an audio show of all levels. It makes it more engaging if it rewards you for paying attention. Basically, that's what a general recommendation is, in general, right? So, yeah. Anyways, they end up finding candy and popcorn, and they're finding vines. However, also a snake that has venom in it that, like, doesn't murder everybody, but nearly murders everybody. um, then yet again, Flyswell ends up coming over, and will of course be grabbing Kite back to their lands. In this episode, we also make a little bit of a bigger use of what I said in the reboot, right? Was one of the big portions of it, which was a more like focus on contestants, like their physical selves, right? Like, you have a bit of a bigger focus on that, because like you can see Melanie dying as usual, um but you get to see like snow globe breaking, shattering. You get to see Dusty, spread out, right? Like, it's a bigger component in this episode than usual. Then again, they take it to the absolute extreme over in and I mean, especially television as well, which we got to find out that television did indeed, you could watch shows on the television, but like, you can see the elements of what they focus on in the reboot be spread out here and shown here, which I think is cool. I enjoy that quite a bit. Globy is the only character that I'm still confused. What are you? Like, every character is a very clearly defined character except Globy. Globy's like, what? You're a globe? Like, what do you mean? Like, those globes that you like spin around, but you're not hooked up to anything. You're like a ball? That's a globe? Are you literally the globe itself? I don't know what you are, to be honest, but yeah, eventually they end up going back because they're, on the show, and that's what you do when you are on the show. Look, the other Tikis understand that Tiki's on the show, and they go like, "Yo, Tiki, win for us, Tikis, all right." I'm saying Tiki a lot. Tiki, Tiki, Tiki. That's kind of a fire beat. Tick, 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 tick. Okay, I read. Goodness stuff. But yeah, then they end up having a mad rush to the finale. Well, actually, it's not a very mad rush. The other team had to kind of leave them team times, and then they're going, yo, I mean, like, yo, you do what you do. They have Kite and Toaster, and they try to win. They try to stop them by like throwing a knife. It really doesn't work. To be honest, it's actually quite abysmal. So, yep, that team ends up being safe. Team 2 ends up being safe. And Team Time, yeah, I mean, that team is struggling. Which, I mean, it makes sense a little bit because, like, again, in this show has very good advantages for teams that win. But like, even then, they got the biggest one. The biggest advantage was their team, and they lost. Which, by the way, again, as I'm saying, they absolutely should not have lost. With the amount of time that it would have taken to go back and make the boat redo everything, that team should have absolutely won the last episode. There is no excuse for that. That is just right inconveniency, right? Like, it makes no sense, and they don't try to explain it. Like, it's just because, oh, it'd be cool, they're gonna make a comeback. No, yeah, okay. They need to make a comeback, but by actually going faster, not by doing something that takes ages and the other team definitely finishes. Like, that's kind of the thing. But whatever. Writing from 12 years ago, 11 years ago. Why? When did this episode release? Episode released on March 5th, 2014. Ooh, 2014. Ooh, much more recent. But yeah, eventually, that team ends up being up for elimination. We won't ever get to find out who is going home. Isn't that crazy? We won't get to find out. It is just not a thing. Because object overload ends right there at that moment. The old object overload until it eventually gets rebooted, and the reboot itself also gets permanently postponed, which yeah, we closed it off on Mars though, because we get to see that Crayon has apparently an epic plan. Was stay prepared. She probably bought like a detonator because yeah, she's got some like button, some explosive, so I think that's what they're doing. She wants to get rid of Melanie. Will that plan work? We don't know. I mean, I don't really know what she's doing, but like, it's really not that big of a deal in theory. Like, what, you're gonna launch an explosive? I mean, okay, maybe somebody's gonna die, but you'll get respawn. Melanie dies every 30 seconds. It's not that big of a deal. Not that big of a deal. Then we get discovered tissue was an open tissue or like an open paper until eventually, they tried to be friends with Lighter, and they were friends with Lighter maybe because, they were best buds or whatever. But eventually Lighter was like, haha, I'm gonna burn you and then I'm gonna crumble you up and shit. And then eventually they end up leaving. But it's interesting because we get to actually see tissue unraveled. It's like, wait, so you don't have to be raveled? That's actually an interesting. You could just unravel it. I mean, maybe you wouldn't want to because of like the big damage in front of you. But it's interesting. Would it be a more efficient form? I guess probably not, because I don't think tissue really like acted that weak when crumbled up. So I think it's interesting. But the fact that they are not crumbled up is interesting. Wait, but how do they uncrumble themselves? I don't. I have no idea, but they're uncrumbled. That's all I know. They were crumbled, and now they're uncrumbled. Okay, that's all that happened. I don't really know. And with that, that's the final scene of Object Overload. But you see, it's a poetic moment to end, because if these plot elements weren't shown yet, we would have no idea. So the fact that this show gets stopped here is kind of crazy, no? Because we get to see all of the crumbs of things that were happening, Boxing Glove entering the Alliance, people start getting accustomed to them and maybe start being nicer. There's a detonation plan going on with Crayon. What is Crayon going to do about it? When is Crayon going to activate this plan? What is it going to do? Tissue, being all sad, rethinking their thing with Lighter. Maybe, eventually they're gonna have an opportunity to speak again. Especially if Lighter, gets eliminated. No, Lighter was eliminated, right? So maybe they get to properly speak as one and maybe have something on that Lighter. In that situation, there's still the whole plot arc going on with Marble, right? Marble that's enamored by Pearly, so that's still a thing that's happening, right? So it's like there's a lot of little elements that the show has placed in, and at the same time, we get to discover backstory on characters, right? Like how Kaiti and no, sorry, wait, am I being dumb? Hold on. Like how Tiki and Television came in, right? So you get to imagine that backstory. But at the same time, there's the other debutantes, right? Such as freaking Loki's the only one that I can think of, because there's another one. What the hell was the other one called? I don't remember. Da 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 da. Well, wait on. It was Loki and wait. I'm trying to remember. Who the hell was it? I don't fucking know. Why am I absolutely got negative brain cells? Okay, I don't know what I'm doing. No, anyways, I don't remember. But somebody else joins as well. And it just ends up that, like, where did they come from, right? Because they came from a Christmas present, but they came from a different Christmas present, correct? There were two. So that means that the Tiki family has sent one of them, and a different family must have sent the other one, right? So, like, it ends up making this interesting little divide, right? To imagine. So, as far as when this show could be counted, I think this would have been is a pretty good spot, because it gives the room for wonder. No, it gives room for wonder. It gives you those elements to think about, and then you get to properly imagine, right? And that's what a lot of people have had to imagine. I'm sure probably somebody at some point has made a fan made Overload continuation, which if somebody has made it, I've never seen it. However, it's kind of interesting. But like, yeah, it's a good moment because it leaves you enough room to wonder. It lets you wonder about what will happen next, and even if we won't ever get to see what happens next, at least it's put in a position where we can imagine it without just having to go, oh, I don't know, we're gonna do a challenge, right? And in terms of animation, I think that it holds up pretty well. It starts off very watchable, which is kind of the nice thing. It starts off knowing the fundamentals, right? Which is the thing that BFDI and I struggled with at the start, because the very start of BFDI and the very start of II are hard to watch because they didn't quite understand the fundamentals, right? Audio being a bit uneven, the writing being really weird, right? But it's like this show at least started off with some of the fundamentals enough that it's still watchable today, and then it implemented its own unique style that's still around today, right? So in general, like that 3 segmented animation that I keep yapping about. I promise it makes sense. I promise I'm not making shit up. It's a thing. Please. It's not called that. It's called something else, but I'm sure it has a name. But yeah, wasn't it enjoyable watching the Big Goal 25? I think it was. I enjoyed watching it. I didn't mind. There was stuff to analyze. There was stuff to watch. It wasn't unwatchable. Of course, you have to remember that I am definitely easy to please, in my opinion. I'm a pretty easy to please person. I'll look for the positive even in a show, and tons of shows that I've looked at, even in Object Catchup, despite of course being modern, they're made by kids with significantly less to work with than even Niall had 14 years ago, right? Which means that I've taken a look at lower quality shows and I've not minded, right? So this show doesn't feel like a low quality show to me, because I've taken a look at lower quality shows, right? Um, Comparatively speaking, I probably put this like nowadays. I think this would probably go in the middle of the quality range, because it's like, I mean, there's tons of shows nowadays in the higher ends of animation that have higher production value, higher quality, just higher in general values. However, it's definitely not a low quality one, because for the time it was very, very high level, and you can still see the sprinklings of the high level being used in today's high level, right? Like, we've taken the best aspects from this time and brought it over to the modern era, and we skipped some others, but like again, the fundamentals were there and they're carried over today, which I think is pretty cool. That is all I think I've realistically got to say about the Object Overload, its franchise, and everything. Will it ever come back? Would I want it? Hold on. Would I want it to come back? I mean, I don't. It's like, yes. I mean, I wouldn't. It would be legendary if it did. It would be legendary if the OG Other Object Show came into play again. Like, it would be like very cool. I can't mind. It would be very cool, and you might get worried, oh, they might butcher it or whatever. It's like, yeah, that was a big concern, but we saw with stuff like BFDI, it's definitely possible, and it's nice to do. And look, this show's no afraid to doing a reboot. So, will it ever happen? My prediction is no. I don't think it'll ever happen. Not realistically. Again, the show's placed in an indefinite hiatus so that it technically can. However, I don't think it realistically ever will. We're just too like life. 10 years ago was wow. How old is that? Hold on, let me check because I think it says on Twitter. XanyLeaves Twitter, 25-year-old Flash animator from England, right? 25-year-old. Like, these videos are 11 years old. I mean, that, like, we were making Object Overload when we were 15. How different is somebody when they're 25 compared to when they're 15? It's just not realistically happening. It's not a focus anymore in life to spend 8 months of your time as a 15-year-old making a reboot of a show. So, and that's perfectly fair. I absolutely don't mind it. And yeah, to whatever else XanyLeaves ends up doing in their career, which I don't know what they're really doing in their career. I mean, they haven't uploaded for like 2 years. I wish them good luck. Object Overload is a very nice relic of its time. I think it withstands it a lot better than other shows from the time do. And let's do ourselves an outro. All right, and that will be all for today's episode of Object Catchup. Yes, this is what I like to do for the episodes that land on special numbers, on stuff like 50, 100, 75, right? I want to be able to break the rules and take a look at some stuff because, right, at the end of the day, the point of Object Catchup is to catch up with shows I've never watched, right? I want to become an experience and have the knowledge on various object shows. But of course, a lot of the famous object shows are done, canceled, finished, any of that stuff, right? And that means that by the rule set, they're never going to release a new episode, which means I'm never going to be capable of taking a look at them, right? So even though, of course, a lot of Object Catchup is showing the support to new creators because I really want to, take a look at the modern state of the OSC. I also, of course, want to take a look at the past because I haven't watched any of the past either, right? So we're going to take the opportunities in these special episodic numbers, all right, from time to time to take a look at these special circumstances where I wouldn't ever be originally capable of looking at it. All right, because again, I wouldn't ever be able to take a look at Object Overload otherwise, and it's literally the most viewed object show episode ever outside of BFDI and II. I have to watch it. You just gotta know about it. It's too big of a deal to not, right? So yeah, this doesn't mean that they're only forced to be on these special numbers. If there's a occasion where I'm like, okay, it's time, I'm gonna do it. Because like, look, at the end of the day, I like to have rules. Rules are something I am definitely a fan of. I'm a fan of having rules, and I like to follow my rules because it just makes me satisfied to know that I'm feeling rules. I don't like being too subjective. I try to make things like what shows to cover and everything's a relatively subjective equation, right? However, at the same time, I also just do what I want. Like if I want to eventually take a look at one, I don't have to wait till episode 100. I can just do it, right? It's not time for one yet because I'm too busy. However, when I'll be available and I'll have time and I'll be like, this is the day, it'll be the day because one is one of the big ones that I absolutely have to watch. But anyways, that was Object Overload. For Object Overload for the past, present, and probably future. We're all caught up with it. See you next time. Goodbye.